This is Defenders TV Podcast, episode 82, looking at Luke Cage, season 1, episode 8, Blowin Up The Spot.
You think I'm holding back? You think I'm holding back? I'm out to save you.
Welcome back, Defenders. This is Defenders TV Podcast, episode 82, where this week, or this day, I should say, we are looking at Luke Cage, episode 8, season 1, Blowin Up The Spot. Well, guys, we're back. I'm in charge for today. Mm-hmm. Yay! Okay, it's almost like it comes down once every three episodes, but it feels longer sometimes.
Pretty much. We did mess it up with the Doctor Strange preview episode, and we'll probably mess it up again with the Doctor Strange movie episode, but our Luke Cage episodes anyway have been ordered the correct way, so.
Yeah, no, and it's a good thing, because who doesn't love my dulcet tones?
Exactly.
My dulcet tunes, I should say. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Chris. I'm one of your hosts.
I'm one of the other hosts, John.
And I'm your final host, Derek.
Okay, guys, so all three of us are here.
Yes.
We're running a record now. 8 episodes in, and not one of us has to drop out yet.
Yes.
So fingers crossed, touching wood. This is going well.
Is this a sign of things to come, Chris?
No, I don't think so. I think we're fine. I think we're good.
We're doing pretty well so far. Not too many more episodes left to go. But we might change. We might have an episode here or there that only has 2 of us on it. But there will always be 2. And hopefully 3 for all of them. But great to be back for another episode.
Then there will be 1.
Then there'll be 1. I'll finish the season on my own.
You are the Highlander.
There can be only 1. Anyway, if you are not subscribed to the podcast, make sure you do. You can subscribe by going over to defenderstvpodcast.com/iTunes. Subscribe to us on any Android device. You can also go through the website there at defenderstvpodcast.com to subscribe to our podcast on any good podcast catcher, or you can just search for Defenders TV Podcast on any podcast catcher of your choice, whichever one you use, we're over on.
Indeed, and if you want to share your thoughts or views or comments on any of the episodes of Luke Cage, any of our podcast episodes where we discuss Luke Cage, please come and join us. You can join us over on Facebook at facebook.com/groups/Defenders TV Podcast. We are at DefendersCast on Twitter. And of course, if you want, you can send in your feedback by email at feedback@DefendersTVPodcast.com. And as well, if you want to hear your own dulcet tones on the podcast, you can leave us a 90-second comment or discussion point over at our website. It's just to the right-hand side of the screen as you go to our website, which is www.defenderstvpodcast.com. Surprisingly enough.
Right. But you don't have to use the www if you don't want to.
No, I'm just doing it old school.
I like it.
I'm going to just go dub now, just to really annoy you. Dub.
New school versus old school there, I think.
Well,
yeah.
I think new school is just without the www or dub.
Yeah.
So in theory, I'm mid-school?
Mid-school? Yeah, somewhere in between.
There.
I'm going to go dub, just to fit in between the 2 of you. Anyway, on that nerdy website chatter, I think it's time to get into the episode, guys.
I think we have to.
I think we do too.
Yeah. So episode 8 of Luke Cage, Blowin Up The Spot, was written by Aida Mashaka Corral. Formerly, she wrote on the TV show Turn. She did a couple episodes of that show. It's a show about the American Revolution with Jamie Bell in it, which you may remember. It was on a couple of years ago. The episode was directed by Norwegian director Magnus Martins. He's directed episodes of Power, 12 Monkeys, and he's directed a recent episode of this season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which we haven't seen yet because it's not being released in Europe until early next year, sadly. My favourite TV show, and I'm waiting months to see episodes.
But then you can binge.
Exactly, so I will. Well, no, they'll still be released once a week, sadly.
Not Netflix.
No.
Not Netflix, sadly. But anyway, at least we know this is another person in the Marvel TV universe that's popping over to Luke Cage, which is quite cool.
They're getting them all.
So, John, do you want to tell us what they gave us in this episode with your synopsis?
Sure. While Luke Cage recovers from his first ever bullet wound with the help of Claire Temple, Misty Knight is trying to find Cornell Stokes' killer. Mariah Dillard seeks help from Shades to put some distance between her and the crime, and uses receptionist Candice, a supposed eyewitness to the murder, to point the finger squarely at Luke Cage. But Misty finds the need to pursue Mariah, as too much evidence is pointing her way. Still under the care of Claire Temple, Luke is attacked again by a former friend, Willis Stryker, aka Diamondback. Their paths have been intertwined all along. Willis is the cause of all of Luke's problems, and brings more to bear as another explosive Judas bullet pierces Luke's now breakable skin. Wow, yeah, so, shot twice in 2 episodes. He's not looking so unbreakable anymore. And, yeah, he looked pretty vulnerable, in this episode. And I kind of, for one, thought this was really cool. It just added that other dimension. I did like the shock of it as well. That, Luke Cage is kind of going, what the fuck is going on? Because he's been shot twice.
Yeah. I thought it was a really weird way to end 2 episodes in a row. Now, I know everybody's been binge watching this, and as you know, listeners, we don't binge watch. We watch an episode and then podcast about it. So probably feels a bit weirder for us, but we ended episode 7 with Luke shot on the ground in Claire Temple's arms. And now we end episode 8 with him shot in a garbage truck being taken off on the streets of New York or streets of Harlem. I think it was a bit weird to end 2 episodes back to back that way.
Yeah, no, I agree. It was a good episode overall, but just why they had to do it the same way. Mm-hmm. They even did the top shot down.
Yeah.
I think is it top shot, is it called?
Yeah.
Yeah, top shot. So they ended exactly the same. Top shot, looking at Luke's bleeding corpse.
Yeah.
And you're
I just thought it was weird. I know, again, listeners, we're probably going a bit upside down here. We're going a little bit Stranger Things by starting at the end of the episode with the shot, but I just immediately went, okay, the credits have rolled now again on a Luke shot. Just thought it was a bit strange.
But yeah, I mean, we discussed 5 points, obviously, for anyone who is just joining us and hasn't listened to the podcast before. We do 5 points, not necessarily in order, even though Derek does kind of like them to be in order.
I like the flow.
Yeah, he's kind of likes that OCD element, whereas I kind of like to mix it up. And I think with that, and with what you two have just said, that leads me on to my first point, which is, shoot me once, shoot me twice. For me, I had no problem with this bookending of the end of episode 7 and episode 8 with effectively the shooting of Luke Cage again by Willis Stryker. Mm-hmm. I actually really enjoyed it. Again, it just highlighted his vulnerability. But I suppose more of this is that we do see that the bullet has exploded within Luke Cage's body. We have that ultrasound moment where it looks like he's giving birth to a really pointy baby, or a fragmented baby, I should say. The bullet has exploded, but we do get some explanation because we were wondering whether Chris and myself had heard a little pop or something like that.
Our pop filter will hopefully have caught that, so you may just have heard absolute silence.
Yeah, exactly. If our pop filter works, you won't have just heard my pop. Yeah, so we see the ultrasound and we see one of those Judas bullets hitting the wall in that kind of underground hospital.
Oh,
so
yeah.
They definitely explode, and it's a confirmed explosion deep within Luke Cage's abs. And in fact, even a little bit of microscope action going on here, where even his soft tissue, in inverted commas, is rock hard. Mm-hmm. Like it has the same properties within his body as just his skin. So he actually is solid. Like he is proper hard.
So what you're saying is that no matter how many times Chris goes to the gym, he's never getting Luke Cage's body.
I could. Why are you telling me this? Yeah, I was wondering about this in the last podcast. Just that, literally, as Claire says, they try and take these shrapnel pieces out, but the whole point is that he's indestructible.
Yeah.
So again, unless, not like you can do with a certain red and blue caped DC superhero who has a rock that cuts him.
Yeah.
Luke Cage doesn't have that.
Yeah.
So I'm like, yeah. So now he has 2 exploded, fragmented, large bits of Shatari metal in his body.
Yes, pretty much, yeah.
And I love that moment where the scalpel breaks within like the soft tissue.
Yeah.
It kind of looks like one of those gross belly buttons, actually.
Yeah.
When you kind of looked at when they were prodding around. But like, yeah, really, really cool the way they did that with the scalpel that it broke.
We are now comparing belly buttons for our audio listeners. Probably lucky that we don't do video podcasting for that particular moment.
No, it was more of an outie rather than an innie, I
see.
suppose, in that sense. But
For our listeners with outie belly buttons, we are happy to have you on board as well.
absolutely.
Yeah, we're belly button
No, I didn't.
indiscriminate, agnostic.
No, it wasn't outie. It just looked like the umbilical cord had been cut because it was all bloody. That kind of like proper fresh outie.
Yeah, no, I'm really happy that they gave this explanation. To be honest, with Claire Temple, great to have her as the character able to do this kind of explanation. And yeah, it was really interesting to know that the bullet did explode inside his body, but didn't damage the tissue inside. But as it's pushing through his body, he's feeling the pain of it. So, great pieces of setup earlier on in the season about the fact that when a bullet hits him, Luke does feel the pain of it. But doesn't react to it because it's not damaging his body, I suppose, is the big thing. So in this episode, when you see that he has had a bullet explode inside him, you can see the pain constantly because the bullet is still pushing outward at a much slower rate than it would for anybody else who doesn't have this really hard tissue pushing back against the bullet is basically what's happening. So it's tearing his insides apart really slowly.
So what they need is an arc reactor like Tony Stark just to help bring it back.
I like it.
Or a big laser, because maybe lasers will cut him.
Maybe.
I'm just waiting for Claire to turn around and go, let's science this bitch. Like, just something like, you know, Robert Downey Jr. will say. He'd be like, okay. Yeah.
Or Captain Kirk could pop down and they could do one of their little tricorder. Because that fixes everything.
Well, Dr. McCoy, preferably, because he wouldn't really want Captain Kirk working on you.
Or like the two crystals that he kind of used. And of course, they always work.
Of course.
Perfect.
Of course.
But with that, Chris, what's your first point?
So, I'm gonna steal the big one. But my gut tells me I'm probably gonna be taking a slightly different angle on this, and I know we may butt heads, but that's fine.
Okay.
So.
Everybody's allowed their opinion.
Exactly. Everyone's got a fair opinion. So, this is a good to great episode overall.
Mm-hmm.
Though, in my opinion, it's fair to say that Stryker doesn't get off to a good start. You've got this guy running around taking pot shots at Luke with a gun and sprouting Bible verses. And he's just not as entertaining, in my opinion. I write, like, as of this one episode, as Stokes was. He's not that as an engaging of a character.
He is crazy with a capital K, really, this character.
I think he's got Kilgrave's sadism. That's the bit that we like.
Right.
In other words, he's got that almost...
There's a manicness to his pursuit of Luke, definitely. And I mean, slightly obsessed eyes. Like, you can tell he's like reached this moment and now he's happy that he's finally hunting the prey that he's been watching over and sort of investigating, keeping an eye on, learning about him, as he kind of says.
Absolutely. And
now he's really happy that he doesn't have to sit back anymore and can go after Luke Cage.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I can dig it, I must say. I love Willa Stryker. I love that his opening line is just straight out of 70s blaxploitation. I love that he's coming in going, can you dig it? You know, straight off something out of Shaft. I just think it's cool because it adds something. It adds a character that is straight out of the 70s, just like the Luke Cage character. So Willa Stryker is so interesting to me. He is nothing like Cornell Stokes. Cornell Stokes is grounded in today. He's grounded in Harlem. This character looks like he's been around for decades. But a hugely important thing about the fact that he is chasing down his prey and firing off bullets left, right, and center at him. These bullets cost what? The equivalent of Harlem. Like, these bullets cost millions. And he's fired off, 4 or 5 of them in the episode, I think he fires off. He misses Luke
3,
twice.
4.
Shoots one into a wall, which explodes. Hits Luke last episode and this episode. So that's 3 or 4.
At least 3.
Yeah, so at least 4. We know of, because he misses him once and hits a wall another time. But yeah, 4 bullets. How much has he spent on this? So this is the real moment for him. So,
yeah, he is a pissed off guy.
Yeah,
definitely.
And we also know the reason why Luke was hit in the stomach last episode is because Willis was just toying with him. He was just showing him that something can pierce your skin. He wasn't trying to kill him with that shot. So, I love that. And he does give my quote of the episode. So this was obviously one of my points. Willis Stryker was one of my points, but he gives my quote of the episode, which is, he talks about The Warriors, one of my favorite movies from the 80s. Absolutely love this movie. If you haven't seen it, if you're a bit younger than myself, or you missed it when you were growing up, The Warriors is a movie about a gang called the Warriors trying to get from one side of New York to the other side of New York, facing off against other gangs, similarly themed kind of gangs. So you'll have a gang of clowns, a gang of guys with baseball bats. It is like the first computer game. It is brilliant, an excellent concept where they have to fight their way through various gangs to get to the other end, and their main rivals do the shout out. They go, "Warriors come out to play." So this is what Willis quotes. He quotes it at Luke. He says, "Luke Cage, come out to play." Effectively, direct quote from the Warriors. Loved it. Thought it was cool. Again, setting him as a character in the history of Luke Cage, just as he is in the history of Carl Lucas in the show. So I thought it was a great way of setting him up, personally.
For me, it was just, I think, this almost scene chewing kind of character. Now, I understand why they did it. Now, yeah. I can see it. So you've got Luke Cage, who's a stoic character. Mm-hmm. The way the portrayal of Luke Cage is very stoic. Yeah. So his antagonist is going to be the almost opposite, which is this over-the-top, almost blaxploitation actor, crazy, manic, kind of sadistic person. Yeah. And I get that. I just don't like it, I don't think. Right. I don't know. Now, again, we've had like, 40 minutes with this guy. Mm-hmm. So I'm not kind of trying to say I'm like benching him. No. Right. It's just maybe we had 7 episodes of Cornell Stokes. Mm-hmm. And I loved that character and that portrayal. Totally. And then Mariah turning now, that's fantastic. And I'll get that to later points. Yep. But Eric LaRae, he's a really good actor who plays Stryker in this, or Diamondback. I think he's a really good actor, and I've seen him in other shows. It's just whatever. I can't always put my finger on it. It's just what made me so annoyed by his character. Mm-hmm.
I think, I have to say, I think I'm kind of erring with Chris here, on that side with regards to the character of Diamondback and Willis Stryker. Mm-hmm. I just mainly because I wasn't expecting them to play his character like that. Yeah. I wasn't expecting that, absolute deep nod to blaxploitation. Mm-hmm. And it came as a bit of a jar for me, yes. I think. That's all. And I kind of got used to it as we went through this episode. And I'm still looking forward to seeing Diamondback, Willis Stryker come back. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think that was the only thing. It just kind of took me out of what had been happening previously. Yes, there were references, there were nods to blaxploitation and all that, but this was absolutely in your face, and it just took a while for that to settle with me. And I think that was the main thing.
He's such a different character from Cornell Stokes as
exactly,
well.
Exactly, yeah. For me, I kind of felt I wasn't expecting a guy effectively almost in combat gear with a huge Humvee type military vehicle with all these weapons parading around Harlem. That was not what I was thinking of. I was thinking that, he would show up with shades. He would be kind of crisp in his suit. Yeah. It was that kind of thing. So I suppose it's not necessarily even the blaxploitation element. It is just that I wasn't expecting that kind of look either. Yeah. But
it is straight out of the comics. Yeah. As far as I remember, because I know the character is in the comic books, and I remember reading it earlier on in the summer, and it does feel like that character exactly as he was drawn in the comic books as well. So, for me, pretty cool. But I totally get what you mean. And it's distracting as well. He is a distracting person because he doesn't feel like the other characters that are in the show. And particularly, again, the shock of the death of Cornell Stokes at the end of the last episode, it is still, really jarring that you've had 7 episodes with that character and he was played so well by Mahershala Ali. You're just not expecting that will be taken away from you in that moment. It's not like it wasn't like a big shootout scene with Luke Cage in how he died. I'm sure we'll be talking a bit more about this in this episode, obviously, but having him taken away and then kind of replaced as the big bad with Willa Stryker, a character that isn't anything like him, probably is a bit jarring. I can see it, but I can dig it, as I said.
But it's also the line he gives, I gave you wings, I sent you to hell, and you come back with superpowers. And as he says that, it's a great line, but it's so theatrical. It's almost something you would see someone stage left say,
Right.
and then walk.
Right.
Exit stage left. And he's foaming at the mouth as he says that, which is part of my thing about being such an amazing actor, because he portrays it with this venom.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the character bit. But the one thing I did like is they didn't give him knives.
Yeah.
Which his comic book counterpart or origin does have.
Right.
Diamondback has gimmick knives. So I think they've just replaced him with gimmick guns being the Shatari bullets type of thing.
Right. I get you.
Which is, I suppose, a good thing.
Well, let me go on to my next point then, because it's kind of connected.
Yep.
It's the worst line of the series, is in this episode. When Luke Cage is facing down Diamondback and calls out the fact that Diamondback's name is the same as a snake, just like Cottonmouth's was, because they're all snakes, so badly put in, or so badly delivered, and did not need to be there. After 7 episodes of hearing about Diamondback and seeing Cottonmouth all the time, us as the audience, we totally know that those are both names of snakes. I just feel putting it into the episode just wasn't necessary. It just wasn't necessary to call out, even if they'd said something like you're venomous or said something, I can...
Well, they'd said about shedding their skin, and even that was... You just kind of, it suddenly just piled on the snake analogies, and I was kind of like, okay, there's no real need for this.
Yeah.
Diamondback is the name of a snake, but it could also just be that his name is Diamondback. It doesn't really need that kind of exposition.
Right. And unfortunately, it has put paid to 2 theories that we had earlier on in the season, so we do have to call those out, as we always do. So, sadly, Shades isn't Diamondback. And sadly, the prison guard from episode 4 is also not Diamondback.
Yeah.
He wasn't a man covered in glass, that was formerly in the prison. Sadly, so.
So basically, my 2 theories.
Sorry,
Yeah,
Chris.
okay, yeah, great.
I'm calling them the Defenders TV podcast theories.
But we all know.
We all know they're Chris's, yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, listeners.
But that's okay. That's the reason why we don't watch ahead, so we can come up with crazy theories that could be misproven or could be disproven.
Didn't I say that it was the prison guard?
No, that was totally Chris. I'll definitely give that one to Chris.
Yeah.
I think you might have said Shades was could possibly
maybe.
be Diamondback, but sad
So
one
we're both
there.
wrong.
We're both wrong.
But
Yeah,
Derek's
we go.
right at this point.
Yeah, Derek's
Hey.
always right.
Of course.
I always edit out my theories after we watch the episode. John, do you want to take us on with your next point?
Yeah, it's the fighting in this episode. It's really good. Again, it kind of comes back to the vulnerability of Luke Cage in this episode. I love the fact that, as they're fighting, in that gorgeous theatre, which is the United Palace Theatre, I checked up in Manhattan, I think.
Beautiful place.
Absolutely, amazing interior there. I tried to see kind of its history and that kind of thing, and it's become a church. It has been a performance venue as well. Right. But primarily I think there was, Sir Simon Rattle from the Berlin Philharmonic Orchestra was there doing stuff, as well as Sigur Rós have done stuff there.
Right.
But Smashing Pumpkins as well.
Yeah.
Eddie Vedder has been there as well. Right. So all that kind of performance venue.
Interesting.
Just on that note, that's actually in Washington Heights. So someone was on the internet, and I can't remember who. It's a bit far away from Harlem.
Yes.
In where they were, the area that they were in.
Right.
So there's this long thread on, I believe, a subreddit somewhere. People just complaining, going, how the hell did they walk that far?
The ambulance and the Humvee chase.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that took them out of Harlem, didn't it?
Well, you can assume that, I reckon, that within the
But it is
chase
a
and the
long way away,
ambulance,
though.
but
Yeah.
it's...
But no, then they were in the clinic, and the clinic's in Harlem.
Oh, is it? Yeah.
Yeah, but
Harlem
as well,
Women's Clinic, isn't it?
I
That's
do
right.
think
Good
that,
point, Chris.
It's a 20-minute walk. That was the kind of thing.
Yeah, but it's not geographically accurate, or it's not supposed to be, because not even films are like.
Oh, I know.
No.
It was just, I was reading the Reddit and I have the exact same response to you, like going, this is a fictional world.
But in all fairness to Lauren Weeks, who set the show in Harlem, a lot of the show does actually revolve around the streets very close in that neighborhood. So there's even moments where Luke walks from Pop's barbershop to his home, and it's really close by. So this particular one is quite surprising that it's so far outside of Harlem in reality.
It really doesn't. It really doesn't matter at all. Parts of Captain America: The First Avenger were filmed in Manchester,
of course.
So I mean, look, as parts of New York. So this is a great venue. I mean, the colonnades, the columns, just the theatre, was absolutely stunning, really eclectic. Really detailed, really intricate. But, I love that within the fighting within, this theatre, just the focus on Luke Cage's stomach. You really got a sense that he was becoming vulnerable. He really did feel, like he could be taken down in some respect. I mean, it's still really, really difficult, but I love the fact that all the time, Diamondback was going for, or trying to go for, his midriff and his stomach where he'd been shot.
Yeah.
I thought it was a real smart move, and it made sense for me that this was affecting, Luke Cage, because I mean, you could still argue, well, maybe he will still just bounce off, you know, but he does feel pain even though he has unbreakable skin. So I like this. I like this vulnerability that Luke Cage, kept getting. I also like the fact that he just kept calling him Carl as well. Really, really cool.
Yeah, definitely. And this fight, one of my favorite bits about it is, obviously Diamondback is working, as you say, the zone where he's got the shot. But I love that they made sure to show you scenes where Diamondback attacks him in places that aren't hurt. So he, swipes the baton that has the cement at the bottom of it. He swipes it against Luke Cage's shoulder, and that smashes the cement. He does a double leg kick to Luke's chest and falls on his back immediately without Luke even moving, which I thought was a really well done shot. I don't know how they actually did it, but I love that he's just stays standing straight up and gets kicked in the chest, and Diamondback falls over, reminding him to make sure that he aims the next shot straight at his stomach. So really well put together kind of scene.
Completely. This is actually one of my favorite fight scenes for the whole show so far.
Right.
And I think it's just because of all those points that you brought out, which is just that it's not just Luke beating guys up or throwing them against the wall. They gave him that vulnerability that John was talking about.
Yeah.
And yes, it's narratively cheap. Like it is, it's like make him weaker so he can fight someone who's normal, but it really works for this. Like it's some of the most decent, like hand-to-hand combat we've seen, because Luke doesn't do hand-to-hand combat. Yeah. Luke does I'm so much stronger than you, I'm just going to tap you and throw you against the wall. Yeah. Kind of thing.
Absolutely.
And Stryker was going punch for punch nearly with him. And to the point where then Luke started, that superhero second wind? Yeah. Yeah, that kind of oh, now I'm angry. I'm still bleeding internally, but I'm angrier. Yeah. Kind of thing.
I love the fact that he bled as well, that it started coming out of his mouth, and the look on Diamondback's face when he realizes that, he's managed to get Luke Cage, Carl Lucas to bleed. Well, I mean, that was a really great scene between the two of them, because it was kind of, even though, okay, Luke is weakened, because now it's more on a par with Diamondback, with Willis Stryker, it seemed like this fight of titans where they both could handle one another for the first time, because he's so weak. Yeah. And I really, really like that. I mean, I love the fact that he uses, the rows of seats to get some leverage to punch down and kick. He punches at his chest, but he kind of bounces off. So you still see that Luke's got the upper hand, but he's able to work Luke Cage much better now that he's weakened. Yeah. I mean, he still gets thrown straight out of the theatre. I love that, because it was that kind of moment where it's like, they've been making too much noise in the movie theatre, and someone getting thrown out the door. Like, that was pretty cool. But that allows him to then sort of take stock and get away. Yeah. To come back for another bite at the cake.
Absolutely. And that is the Luke Cage signature move, as you pointed out before, Chris, the grabbing someone by the scruff of the pants and throwing them out through a door. So
literally, he's done it like at least 4 times now. Yeah. I'm like, this is becoming signature. Yoink! Right. Whee! I'm sure there is some deleted scenes when they were throwing him, kind of, and it was just like, yeah! You can just imagine some of these outtakes where they put Benny Hill music dubbed over it, and it'd be like, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Anyway.
So, on that musical bombshell of Benny Hill music in Luke Cage, Chris, what's your next point? Hopefully less controversial than that.
First I'm going to apologise to Gio Coker, going, no, I'm assuming you had better taste than to put in episode like 12 Benny Hill music. But if it does come, I'm happy? Question mark? But it'd be, more importantly, Claire Temple. Back again. She couldn't have arrived at Harlem at a better point in time.
There certainly couldn't have been a better person at your side if you get shot than the night nurse.
Yeah, but she's still figuring it out.
Oh yeah.
But that's kind of one of my points, in that they've yet to make her anything more than a nurse.
Right.
They haven't made her, she's trying, you can see the threads that they're starting to build there.
Yeah.
In terms of she will be the one that joins them together. She will be the
literally, possibly, if they get shot and cut as much as they do.
She will make the centipede.
Right.
The superhero centipede.
Oh my god. Yeah.
The horror film.
That's not a movie I want to see.
No.
Hopefully Doctor Strange stays well clear of that dimension.
Yeah, that would be scary. Marvel Zombies, Marvel Centipede. This is it's a slight bugbear I'm starting to get, in that Rosario Dawson is an amazing actress. She's played the character Claire Temple amazingly well. But to date, she's played a nurse.
Yeah.
They haven't really fully, they've developed the character. I think I wrote this down. They have a great asset there. They just haven't figured out, I don't think they figured out fully at this point in time, a way to utilize that asset.
I think we're just there in this episode. I think this is the episode that's done it. I think she's just on that cusp. She's made that decision with her mom in the cafe scene a couple episodes ago, where she wants to be the one to help superheroes do what they do, to support them, to help them save people. And in this episode, you see exactly what she is. She's the Alfred to possibly the Defenders. She's the one they come to when they have problems. She looks like she, as you say, is going to science the out of some things here. She's looking in a microscope. She's figuring out exactly what's wrong with Luke Cage here when somebody else wouldn't do it. You know, when somebody else would possibly have let him die because they wouldn't have known a way to figure this out. Claire is able to figure out what's wrong with him, what she can do. So she reminds him again that when Jessica shot him in the face with the shotgun, she was the one that was able to figure out how to release the liquid that was on his brain after the shotgun bullet. And that's why he's alive. It's not just because of his healing powers and not just because of the 4 days he spent recovering from that shotgun bullet. 4 hours even, I think. Yeah. It's because she drained the liquid from his head. So while it is still a nurse, it's also a very sciencey nurse and a very inquisitive nurse who wants to actually help these guys out. So I think they've just realized that point with her now in this episode. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that in future. So you're right. To this point, the shows haven't pushed her past being a nurse, but I think she's realizing where she needs to go in her path.
But she was kind of a confidant as well with Daredevil. I mean, but she wasn't in Daredevil to the same extent as this, and that's the thing. But, you know, she was his kind of nurse and she patched him up and so on. But she also did, like, the conversations between Claire Temple and Matt Murdock or Daredevil, you know, she did kind of try to question him and be some kind of, like, confidant with him. But then ultimately gave up because he was so full on with his guilt that, you know, she's kind of like, I can't get through to you. So, like,
and with Jessica, she was constantly supporting her and trying to push her into more action. And same with Luke. She's trying to push him into action when he was trying to step back from the limelight, I suppose. Probably to a bit more effect with Luke. He seems to be taking on the mantle of the hero of Harlem a bit more than Jessica wanted to take on that mantle. But no, I do take the point though.
Yeah, no, and I think you're right that they're gonna start using her to a better agency if they make her the brains behind the street level heroes. That could work. Like, you see a bare hint of it when she's in the cell with Misty, which is a great exchange, by the way. It's just fantastic.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
On a side note, when Misty asked her, did she want a lawyer? Were any of you thinking, like, Matt Murdock's going to walk in any day?
Yeah.
I was like, ah.
Of course. We were going to get our Matt or Foggy.
Yeah, I was expecting one of them.
Yeah.
Little cameo, like the guy from Wilson Fisk's attorney, that maybe Foggy would come in. Absolutely.
I was just so hoping that. But yes, I think that hopefully this is the turning point for Claire Temple's character or should I say, this is the turning point for Claire Temple's character being portrayed by Rosario Dawson, who is an amazing actress and has been portraying it fantastically to this point.
Absolutely.
But they haven't just given her the agency to go out on her own as a character. She's the Alfred, but even the Alfred wore the batsuit the odd time.
Right. Interesting.
I'm pretty sure there's at least one episode. I remember it in something.
Interesting. It's possible.
It's very possible. Certainly Batman 66.
Over 75 years of comic books. I haven't read them all, so that is absolutely entirely possible. But speaking of great characters, Mariah Dillard and Shades in this episode are just fantastic for me. I love these two. I think I mentioned in episode 7 that I thought there was a little spark of a relationship starting between these two. I think there's a bit more in this episode. I'm not a shipper, but if I was, Sharia, maybe? Shades and Mariah. Maids. I can see it happening. I really can. These two are just so good together. We're seeing the real Black Mariah come out here, where she's killed, Cornell, obviously, and is now realizing where that can push her to. So she makes the comment after Candace has helped them out, saying that she saw Luke Cage kill Cornell. She makes that comment that, if it doesn't work out, we'll kill her, everybody in her tenement, and then maybe burn down the building. That's a supervillain now.
She won't burn down the building.
Sorry.
No, because Duke Ellington used to have his apartment there, and she goes, that'd be such a shame because it will lose so much value.
That's true. Sorry.
Like a really nice little sort of twist there from her, just as a matter of fact. Like, always the businesswoman, always looking to, get that investment, but at the same time now this darker edge to it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, really, really cool. Also love Shades helping her out. Obviously, really cool. They're becoming strong allies here. We find out that Shades is effectively getting the club. It'll go into Mariah's name because being the only living relative of Cornell, but Shades is going to be the one in control. So club's not going anywhere. We're going to see Harlem Paradise in the hands of effectively Diamondback and Shades. So that's quite interesting. And another one of my favorite lines in the episode delivered by Shades, where he says, when you get done with this, you can go back to being the sexy, domineering bitch we hate to love. I just so well delivered. What a great moment.
This is the last time you're going to call me bitch.
Yep.
I was like, that's good.
But he does call her sexy as well. So,
yeah.
Hey.
Yeah, but no, I'm not going down this rabbit hole. It's like a compliment sandwich. Let's call it that.
Right.
I'm completely with you on this one. We're seeing Mariah become Black Mariah. Even if it's not even one of the main storylines, if we want to call it a sub-storyline, kind of a subplot, perhaps even using a technical term.
Yeah.
I guess because I know technical terms. It's just really interesting to watch Mariah Dillard's downfall. You could argue it's the other way around. It's Mariah Dillard's uprising.
Right.
To become the anti-Mabel or her downfall to become the anti-Mabel.
Yeah.
Depending on what way you're looking at this, you see a character torn. Because she was a badass woman for that whole episode. And then she got back to her house and she saw
Aunt Mabel's photo. Yeah.
And she looked like she was about to break and cry and like shatter.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, that's interesting because you're still giving this, she is this strong, powerful, no nonsense. I'm going to get everyone. The line I thought was brilliant was the, point when she's talking to, Candace and Candace goes, I'm not a whore. And no, you're not a whore. You're a businesswoman. And that in your lap represents a chance to change your life and that of your whole family. That's power.
Yes.
And I was like, Oh,
Yes.
that's a good line.
Just gives you chills. doesn't
Yeah.
it?
She was so good. I love, as you say, the spectre of Mama Mabel there in the photo frame, hanging over her, and she's still fighting against being her offspring and doing what Mama Mabel did. She doesn't want to be that, but it's coming now. It's the Black Mariah, the murder, the death, the ease with which that trips off the tongue is all coming in. I thought that was really cool. Yet Shades Mariah, and also just like her speech outside the 29th precinct, absolutely. I think her aide says you nailed that. And it was such a great speech. Just this notion that, my cousin was a complex man, but he didn't hide in the shadows. He's tried to confront and make things better with his speech at Pop's funeral. But she really kind of puts the pressure on these vigilantes and on Luke Cage. And it's such a great turn. She's really pressing her advantage here. And I love that. She's a really complex character. She can come across as weak and vulnerable and a bit frightened of herself. And obviously Mama Mabel still. But now with this kind of tutelage from Shades, that, she is stepping up to replace Cornell and become the Black Mariah. So excellent development of her character in this episode. I think coming on to my next point, it's that I think there are a lot of strong women in here, doing things that maybe were out of character. I think, we've talked about Claire Temple, we've talked about Mariah Dillard, but we have Misty Knight. I mean, this is a huge Misty Knight story, and we see her kind of losing it slightly, She's been squeezed by her superior, Priscilla, who even sees that, seems to be in cahoots in some way with Mariah Dillard. She at least knows.
They're former sorority sisters.
They know one another. But despite that, and you kind of think, well, is there something shady going on there? Priscilla still says to Misty Knight, but you've been given an eyewitness who said, Luke Cage, where is this guy? Yet you're going after someone else who there's no tangible evidence. You might have a suspicion, but at the moment we have an eyewitness and a chief suspect. So she really does put the pressure on Misty Knight. Mariah Dillard is putting the pressure on Misty Knight. And it all kind of explodes in that fantastic interrogation scene, or interview, I should say, at the police station between her and Claire Temple, where, she loses it and throttles Claire Temple. This is so out of character. She's probably still kind of unsettled because of Raphael's death. She still probably is conflicted over Luke Cage. Is he good? Is he bad? Claire Temple gives her a dose of kind of reality. You've met him, you know him, he's fine. Why are you persistently going after him? And she just loses it because everyone has been at her all this day. And I think primarily she has a fantastic episode, especially where she is kidnapped by Willis Stryker as well.
Just one quick point. I've got Luke Cage is innocent written down because Claire Temple delivered that line so strongly that I did write it down. Luke Cage is innocent, write it down. So that is in my notes. Yes, the scene with Misty and Diamondback was fantastic. The gun to the head, where she's standing up face to face with him, eye to eye, really strong character, and then he makes her kneel down on the ground, again, really strong face. I had to rewind the next scene because I thought it was so well delivered. As he moves the gun around to the back of her head, Misty's face drops and you can see the terror on her face that she could be dead in the street. I thought that was fantastically done. Really great moment for Simone Missick. And again, when she loses it in the interrogation room with Claire Temple, just so much power in that character and so much, you can tell why she's getting so angry and so aggressive here. She's being told what to do by everybody, yet she knows it's not right because of her investigation skills. She knows there's something else behind all of this. This story that's been thrown in her lap about Luke Cage being the killer can't be true, can't be right. She has something else going on, but she's getting people walking out on her in interrogations, which never has happened to Misty before. She's always been in control of the situation. It's what we've been led to understand. So, yeah, really well, really good episode for Simone Missick. Really cool.
Yeah, no, and I'll agree basically with all your points. Simone Missick's killing it this season.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I've gone through an episode without commending her at some point within an episode. This is the downfall of Detective Night.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is what we will see in another 2 episodes, she will be on last legs.
Yeah.
2 more episodes, she's off the police, suspended without parole.
Yeah.
If you want to call it that.
Yeah. Absolutely. Like, what's going to happen? Priscilla closes the door on the camera after she's been caught with her hands around Claire's neck. So, yeah, this is like really going to be interesting.
Yeah. And I think what we're going to end up seeing is that it will get to a point within the next couple. Again, I'm back speculating, but it's just because I know Misty's character is this hot-headed, fiery bombshell. I'd say, I know bombshell is more I know people use it from the derogatory term in terms of the pinups and the bombshells, but this, I mean more that she's just an explosion of anger and sensibility and courageousness and investigation skills. It's just all kind of built into one.
Mm-hmm.
But this is where it goes wrong.
Yeah.
And I think it will very much, they're signposting it a bit in that she knows Luke is somewhat innocent.
Yeah.
She believes Luke is innocent.
Yeah.
But then they'll probably find Luke Cage guilty of somehow, or they'll push to get him arrested. And that's when she'll come to loggerheads with her ideal of being the ideals that we saw when she was talking to Scarf in that previous scene in the previous episode.
Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely killing it.
Really
this
like
episode.
it. Yeah, really like it. One other thing that I really liked about this was one of my points, is just the opening of the episode. So we've gone to the end, and then we're going back to the opening towards the end of the podcast. But I loved the showing Misty's skills again. So we mentioned it earlier on in one of the other episodes about her skills kind of mirroring the character of Will in Hannibal, who's able to see a crime scene and reverse it back and play it backwards. And we kind of said that's been done on Hannibal, I like being used once, but not many, many times in the show. What I loved about the opening of this episode was actually showing the real life sequences with Mariah intercut with Misty investigating the area. So it wasn't her piecing together the crime and how it happened. It was us seeing the aftermath of the crime, with Mariah overlooking a club with Cornell still on the floor and being intercut with Misty, doing her investigation. So I love that it's kind of showing Misty isn't piecing together exactly what happened. She isn't seeing Mariah in the club, but we are, and we're seing the aftermath. I thought it was a really smart way of putting those two
really
scenes,
cool,
which were both hugely important, but it had a lot of exposition in them about what had happened in the previous episode. But I thought it was a really smart way of putting the two together. Really cool that she figured out a lot of things from that and used them in the later interrogation as well.
Absolutely. And I think as well, another important thing here, probably moving forward, is that Candice, the VIP hostess, calls out in her interview with Misty Knight down at the cop shop is, that she saw her with Luke Cage. She saw him, and she kind of throws that in as a curveball at Misty Knight, who does get rattled, but, she equally then throws one back to say, what do they have on you for you to be lying,
Yeah, I love those lines that she pulls together. So if you don't remember her from the first episode, she was the girl that came up to Luke and said, could he accompany her up to visit Mr. Stokes because she was scared going up to her on his own. Now she's telling Misty that she slept with him, that she was one of his girls, basically. So I love that kind of bit that Misty pulls out really quickly because she happened to be at the bar when that whole exchange happened between herself and Luke, or between Candice and Luke in the first episode. I love that Misty pulls that out and is kind of going, well, hold on a second. You were too scared to go up to him 3 days ago. Now you're saying you're one of his girls and you don't have the code to get in through his VIP entrance. So you're not telling me the truth here. So I love that Misty's able to piece this stuff together and you get to see that. So, once again, doing another great job in this show of the investigation element,
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Chris, what's your next point?
I'm going to talk about the science part.
Okay.
And I just want to go into this because it kind of made no sense in an actual science, because Oh,
Interesting.
It-
Interesting.
basically, she was saying that what makes him super strong, what makes him invulnerable is that his cells, basically, when you try and separate them,
Yeah.
they spring back together.
Yes.
So velocity impact why he feels the pain is because they still shift, but then they spring back, thus making him almost impenetrable. Doesn't really explain the super strength. I'm thinking about it, because we all just accepted it. I went, oh yeah, okay, that makes sense. And then I'm going, hold on. So, because that's what I'm saying, when if I lift something, my cells are separating?
Okay.
No.
No, I don't know whether that was that.
I don't think it's really science.
No.
Well,
Like, what I mean, I think basically his soft tissue,
Yes.
and that's why the bullet's traveling through still, it breaks and reforms. So she just says something along the, and it's pure to try and explain it, but she says it's super elastic, which is the source of your strength.
Like Mr. Fantastic?
But exactly, like he isn't elastic or stretchy.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but look, it's.
But I know what you mean, but I don't know whether she was doing any explanation at all for his super strength. I don't know whether the
she
two
said
are
strength.
connected.
She said strength.
She did.
She said strength and your impenetrable skin.
Yeah.
Because that was the whole point.
Impenetrable skin, I can see. Strength, maybe something like it. Your fists are hard as rocks, so you're hitting a bit harder than other people
lifts
would.
things really.
But yeah, no.
But I think. Well, I know she was talking about blood cells. It was so. The thing is that there are different types of cells.
Yeah, so I agree with you that there are different types of cells. It was just for me. It was very much we're gonna science this, and this is why the superhero power came from. I'm like, No, I know. I'm also talking about a universe where a boy gets bitten by a spider and can climb walls.
Yeah, now that's the same universe. Yeah,
Yeah,
of course,
exactly. Now I'm like, okay, I can see where you're trying to go, and thank you for trying to science this. It would have been better going, you got sprinkled with pixie dust. And now you have a magical skin.
they'd never do that.
Asgardian pixie dust.
No,
that could work. See, because then you'd be like, oh, well, it's science, so it's okay.
Yeah.
It's Asgardian science.
I don't think they'd ever go there, but they did also try and to have a scientific explanation for Purple Man's powers in Jessica Jones, didn't they? And there's no scientific explanation for a man that can control what other people's minds around him. There's no way you could possibly have a scientific explanation for that. Yeah, but that's not possible. So it's absolutely impossibility. So I take your point. There's no way that the explanation of the cells reforming could explain why he has super strength. I totally agree with you. They tried.
Yeah, it was that. It was just more the delivery.
I think I've described the show to more people because so many people are interested in Luke Cage. I've described the show to more people, and I am describing it as The Wire with a little bit of Marvel stuff in it, a little bit of superhero stuff. And if you can get over that, then grand. They probably shouldn't have tried to explain his powers with the science reason, but they always try.
Or they should have done it a bit more. They've given it a bit more gravitas rather than.
But it's only the start. It's only because she was like saying, "I will work this out," because she doesn't know how to deal with this bullet fracturing through his body. And I took it to mean just the cells of some of his soft tissue. So.
Yeah, no, I took it more.
She's going to be in the Batcave as the Alfred, checking out where all these powers are coming from, and trying to give the scientific explanations. Yeah,
because all she did was smear the blood, so maybe that's just his blood cells, unless it had some other cells in there. But look, she was in fact, where was she? It was like an underground hospital.
It was
or
the
clinic.
Harlem Women's Clinic.
Okay.
That's where Misty finds them in the end, isn't it?
Yeah. I just, for me, and I'll kind of close this point. It was just, I would have preferred, now, hopefully they do. If they give it a better explanation, and when they're trying to suck the fragments out, that's great. But it was 30 seconds in a 13-hour show. And I was like, at least with Kilgrave, and I understand your point about Kilgrave, they gave it a couple of episodes almost explaining that they were playing around with DNA, blah, 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 and then this was one of the side effects.
I think sometimes less is more, and maybe they didn't need to try and explain this, not just yet, or even if it was just Claire saying, I need to figure this out, and then, laser scalpel.
Yes.
Yeah.
You want that laser scalpel
You
so
do,
much.
don't you?
Yeah.
I think I take the explanation about his skin. I think the explanation works really well about his skin, but connecting it to his super strength, you're right. I don't think there's
And
any
he's not
connection there.
Yeah.
infinitely strong.
Yeah. Because that would almost imply if your cells were always knitting back together, you could lift anything. Because your strength is also when it comes down to bone structure. See, that was the thing. It just took me out of it. I was just like, now my brain is thinking this and this. Or if he lifts the Empire State's Building, is his bone indestructible? Does he, in theory, have adamantium level of bone?
No, he has a finite strength and recovery, and that's why he's vulnerable, and that's why he is. It's not a perfect. It's a tagline of unbreakable skin, but actually, he does have breakable.
If you get a bullet that can drill through it,
yeah, exactly.
I'm just going to go on to my final point, which is about Willis Stryker. He is a character from the comic books, as I've said, and his story is a little bit different in the comic book. He's the one that sends Luke to jail, definitely. But I like some of the little things that are dropped in this episode. So we'll find out more, I'm sure, about Willis Stryker. But some of the things that he drops here about who he is and what his connection to Luke is. So he says he was always around at Luke's house. Luke's father was a preacher and always gave out to him because he was the quarterback, and Luke also played for the football team, and the quarterback always wanted to pass the ball. Luke was a runner, apparently. Yeah, no, I know American football, so one sport I can actually talk about. But because Willis wasn't passing the ball to Luke, then he was being criticized by his father, basically. So this is also analogous, I presume, to the relationship that Luke had with his father, that he was always trying to make sure that his son got the best in life, and then Luke ended off in prison. Yeah.
Yep.
So there is that relationship there. There's definitely something there with Willis Stryker. Willis obviously came from a little bit of a different background. His mother destroying herself is what he said, because of something that Luke did. Luke mentions he should have stood up for Willis and didn't. He took a back seat. He didn't stand up for Willis Stryker. So I like that there's a deep-seated relationship between these two that we didn't find out in the episode. It wasn't all like a James Bond villain plot where he comes and goes, "Hi, Carl, I'm back. This is all the things you did to me. My mother killed herself because of that thing you did," or whatever exactly. But I like the little drops of things that are connected between the two.
It really is teasery, actually, and it does link into my final point as well, which is, and we've talked about Willis Stryker and Diamondback, but it was, he's the nemesis. Yes. He is somehow connected, maybe a colleague, but is he also a brother? Is standing up for him, is that in a domestic sense? Is it within a professional sense? Were they both cops? Were they actually a brother? He says, "You were my brother." Is it that kind of, the idea that you best friend?
Yeah.
And that recognition that you're best friends for life and you're a brother in that sense.
But that was weirdly delivered but it was weirdly delivered because Luke says to him, "I treated you like a brother." And his response to it was, "I am your brother."
Exactly.
It was like a reveal that he is actually Luke's brother and Luke never knew it, but it just seemed like a weirdly delivered line. So it didn't feel like, "I am your brother," as in I'm your best friend. It was, he's telling Luke, "I am your brother," and you didn't know it almost.
Yeah. And so all these different teases as to the connection between these two, really, really good. Is the reason why he was being given out to by Luke's dad was because he was also the son to him,
he was a bastard son, maybe, or
a bastard son, or adopted in some way, and that's why maybe Luke slightly standoffish and said, "I should have stood up to you." And so really, it's just some nice little teasers on this, like you say. And that was kind of one of my points as well. Really, really good.
It's like the Game of Thrones part of Luke Cage there. Yeah.
What this first straight away made me think, that line, "I am your brother," and then we know the mother destroyed herself, we can assume some form of drugs, perhaps, or alcohol. And then the father being the preacher, I'm going, preacher maybe wasn't a good preacher. And then the mother had the son and he wouldn't take it. The mother turns to drugs or alcohol. And then that's what we find out. And then this is again, the move forward.
Yeah.
But Luke can't because he's in a garbage truck. Well, the garbage truck's moving forward.
Yes, he's moving forward.
So he's moving
On
forward,
his back.
literally on his back. But no, that's what, sure, just on your point, yeah. The nemesis, the colleague, the brother part I took, it seemed like a reveal.
Yeah.
It
But-
did.
But they hadn't
Exactly.
teased it up at the beginning. I was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, it felt like coming directly after the line of "I treated you like a brother, I am your brother." It just, you're right, it didn't feel like something that it didn't have the gravitas that you would need for that kind of reveal in that scene. Yeah.
But as well, it was kind of interesting in terms of Reva as well, because he's just kind of going, Reva, I know how much that makes you squirm, but
Get that name out of your mouth.
Yeah,
says
but
Luke, yeah.
But there is this idea that it's different from the comics as well. Within the comics, Luke Cage effectively, goes behind Willa Stryker's back and has an affair with Reva. That's what sets Carl Lucas, Luke Cage, up for prison by heroin being planted on him by Willis. So that doesn't seem to be the case here, but there's obviously something.
Yeah.
And Stryker knows that this is his Achilles heel. This is again another weak point for him to use against Luke Cage.
Yeah.
how does Stryker know about Reva? Think about it.
So, no, Stryker said he was in control of everything to do with Luke Cage, except for Reva's death, he says. He says he'd been watching him all the time. And he was watching him in the prison, so he obviously still controlled Shades in the prison who was targeting him.
There is that moment where, the camera points to a CCTV camera on the wall, in episode 4, in the flashback. You just wonder, is Willa Stryker behind there?
Yeah.
Who knows?
Absolutely. We did wonder about that, didn't we?
Yeah, we actually were curious. That does make sense. My only bit is for Netflix Marvel aficionados who, no, that's probably the wrong way of saying it. For people who haven't watched Jessica Jones and have just entered on Luke Cage, they will not understand the death comment.
Right.
And unless that is explained by Luke at some point, the death goes unknown, or it is an unknown quantity. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because we understand that actually Luke was not responsible for Reva's death.
Yes.
Or that he had no part in it. The comment makes it sound like he had a part in Reva's death.
Like Diamondback did.
Diamondback, yes.
Yeah.
It's just for those people who hadn't watched Jessica Jones, it needs some explanation.
I do like that he specifically says, "I know I didn't kill her. I just like saying her name." I like that Willa Stryker says that to Luke.
Yeah.
That he's like, I know I didn't kill her, but hey, I'll take credit for it if it makes you squirm. Really like that moment. I think we'll find out more about his plan and more about the connections between him and Luke in the future. Any notes about the episode, boys? I think that's enough of the points.
Yes.
John, would you like to go first with your notes?
I think I might.
Okay. If you get an Easter egg, I'm going to kill you.
I love the moment where Claire Temple calls him Macho Man and he turns around and says, "No, it's Power Man." And there's a nice little nod back to Pops there, and that's what Pops used to call him. So that was really cool.
So it does sound like he may actually take that on as a mantle. He might actually take it on because he does have now. He has made that connection back to Pops calling him that.
And Macho Man is already taken by Randy Savage anyway. And then the other thing is, I really like the fact that, we have Mariah Dillard, who, really kind of calls out Luke Cage as being, working from the shadows as we don't know anything about him. And this is kind of repeated again by Willa Stryker, where he calls him the people of Harlem are worshipping a false idol. I've been watching you and so on. I thought that was a really, really nice little tone and intonation to Willa Stryker's kind of threat.
Yeah.
This is my cross to bear.
Yeah, exactly. Really, really good.
There was a lot of, it was a very Daredevil-esque, Catholicism laced episode.
Absolutely.
Just my cross to bear, my devil sent you to hell. There was a lovely undertone in that. Mm-hmm. And then it sometimes went above tone, and then it came back under the tone.
Yeah.
Is that all your points?
Yeah.
So I'm going to jump in with my point, and I think it was just a nice Easter egg. WHIH, the news station in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, was shown
Yes.
twice.
That's the one we've seen in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and we've seen in
Ant-Man.
Daredevil, Ant-Man, yeah.
It's all there, and yeah, they showed the gentleman who says something bad back to Mariah, and she turns and goes, "What?" He says his name and then goes, "WHIH," and I'm like, I know that news report.
Excellent.
And then finally, just Ben Donovan, I know we mentioned him very quickly. He came back for this episode, and it's nice to see him back again.
Yeah.
I don't know if we called this out in previous episodes, that he is a Luke Cage character
Yes.
from Heroes for Hire issue 14.
Yeah.
I'm hoping
I didn't get the issue number last time, but yes.
Yeah, I added one useful piece of information at the end. I don't know if we'll ever see him powered or the size, but I would love to see that Ben Donovan portrayal bulk up, and that would be really funny to watch.
It'd be interesting.
It would be cool.
I'm hoping that we actually never see the powered versions of people like Shades and Comanche and Ben Donovan, because they're terrible. Shades basically wears a Cyclops type mask.
Yeah.
Very similar, but the mask shoots lasers out of it. Can't see that with Shades. Comanche does sadly carry a bow and arrow with arrows like Hawkeye, which shoot weaponized
And the
stuff.
Comanche axe.
Not cool,
Yeah.
guys, not cool. But hey, you never
Ben
know.
Donovan rips his suit. He always has an Armani suit, and then he hulks out.
Nice.
And he doesn't actually hulk or grow or anything. He just somehow seems to tear off his sleeves.
He is ripped under that
Yeah.
suit,
Yeah.
basically. Nice.
So it'd just be interesting to see if he was in that police station and goes, "I'll show you."
Maybe.
Do you have any notes, Derek?
I do, because you may have noticed I didn't talk about the name of the episode this time, so I've pushed it down into the notes, really because it's not that connected with the episode. There's two things about it. The episode obviously was called Blowin Up The Spot. The big moment in the episode is obviously the explosion that knocks over the ambulance, so that is the spot that's blown up, really. That's about it. That's about the only connection.
It could also be his abs.
Could be, yeah, maybe. But there's
I know which one I prefer.
I think the blowing up of the ambulance in the middle of Harlem is pretty darn cool, though.
Absolutely.
Which also leads me to my other note, which is the couple of Terminator 2 kind of things in here. It's just things that mostly maybe reminisce about Terminator 2 that may not have been intended. But the gun that Diamondback uses to blow up the ambulance is the same gun that Arnold Schwarzenegger's Terminator in Terminator 2 is using on the attack on Cyberdyne Industries. He's standing at the top of the window shooting these bullets that land and then explode. So that's the same gun. I love that.
I can't remember the name of the gun, but you can also pick it up in Drake's Fortune as well. It's one of the weapons you can use there. Yeah.
That's true. And the second one is also the movement of Luke Cage when he's going after Diamondback and following him to the theater. It really reminded me of the kind of stalker nature of a Terminator. The kind of the powerful being walking at a pretty deliberate or very slow pace. Actually, he's not running to get to Stryker, probably because he's injured. But I like that kind of slow, deliberate, measured kind of walking attacker that was in there. Both things just reminded me quite a lot of Terminator 2. Probably also because it's one of my favorite films. So yeah.
Actually, just speaking of this, and this is sorry, I'm coming on the end for a second. Last final note. Mm-hmm. So you also have a large man driving around in a Humvee after blowing up an ambulance.
Yes.
Walking down the street, shooting.
Yes.
And there's no cops.
That is something that Misty does point out, doesn't she? That he's obviously a pretty aggressive kind of guy. We've just had all these explosions going on. Like, she even knows, was that you in the ambulance? She says to Luke when she arrives in. So everybody knows about these things. What is Willis Stryker doing? Does he have another batch of cops in his pocket that weren't taken out by Cottonmouth?
And you do hear,
maybe.
But you do hear the police sirens sort of in the distance as Diamondback's getting back into the Humvee, and Claire Temple's cousin, is it, who has been driving, or uncle who's been driving the ambulance, is saying, "Go, get out of here," you know. So there's definitely, they are probably around and about.
Yeah.
It's just all off screen in this.
Absolutely. This is also an area of Harlem where we've just had a rocket launcher blow up the local Chinese restaurant. So, there's a lot going on in Harlem and probably not enough cops if they've just gotten rid of loads of them because they were in the pocket of Cottonmouth. So maybe the response time is a little slower.
It's gone down to 10 minutes.
And just one final note, because it's an error I made on a previous episode. And I don't really know why I made it, because I did know it, but it is confirmed in the episode that Mariah and Cornell Stokes were blood relatives. I think I corrected John weirdly when he said blood relatives. They are blood relatives. They are first cousins, is what Mariah says. They had previously just said cousins, which I thought to mean one of those kind of relationships things where the person that lives in your house, it's not your brother. You just call him a cousin or an uncle or whatever.
Damn, yeah, no, I could have used my really good line there about blood relatives spilling blood or something
true,
like that.
Yeah, sorry about that.
That's fine. I shall go and cry in a cupboard.
So I think that's all our notes for the end.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to start it off. Derek, do you defend this episode?
I love this episode of Luke Cage. I love it. I love seeing Willa Stryker in here. I think he's just cool and obviously the reference to The Warriors, one of my favorite movies, which is also Willa Stryker chasing down Carl Lucas. Carl come out to play. Everything worked for me in this episode. It's also a Misty Knight episode. It's an episode where she's doing some great investigation and getting beaten down left, right and centre to the point where she absolutely could be leaving the police force pretty darn soon if Priscilla has her way. It seems Priscilla's going to push her off the force. So some great stuff going on here in this episode. I didn't expect to enjoy it as much. There is still a little bit of an absence there. Now that we know the Cottonmouth is actually dead, his body's going off to be burnt, basically. So we are going to not see Marshall Ali anymore, which is a real shame for the show, I think. But I think having someone as ostentatious in there as Eric LeRae Harvey playing the part of Diamondback, it's going to be fun towards the rest of the season. I think it's going to elevate that bit of humor that we've kind of been missing for the start of the season. He does feel more like a comic book character than anybody we've seen in the show so far. So I'm interested to see what happens for the rest of the season. So yes, I do defend it. But John, do you defend this episode of Luke Cage?
I also defend this episode of Luke Cage. I'm giving it 4 Judas bullets straight to the abs out of 5.
That's billions, John. Billions you're giving.
I know. Billions upon billions of greenback dollars, and Harlem's, for this episode. It was really good. I mean, I have to say, meeting Diamondback for the first time, I was taken out of that character because it's taken so long for him to be revealed. I wasn't expecting him to be like that. Mm-hmm. That kind of, explicitly, blaxploitation. But actually over the course of the episode, I got used to it, and that was fun. And I can't wait to see him, back. I can't wait to see, how these little nuggets and teasers that have been sort of laid down by Willa Stryker and Luke Cage, how they get revealed. That was really good. And again, as you say, this is another great episode for Misty Knight. We have this huge amount of interaction with, the 4 ladies, Mariah Dillard, Priscilla, her boss, Claire Temple, and of course Candice, the VIP hostess. And in all of them, Misty Knight is coming off as second fiddle to these other ladies. She's not she's lost her right hand man in Raph. So really, she's trying to figure her own way through this, but she's coming under huge pressure. And I loved how this just played out. I loved her conflict about Luke Cage. And I just thought this was a really good episode. Some of the science a bit ropey. Maybe you don't need to talk about that so much, but it's a really good episode. And the thing for me is just how Misty Knight and Luke Cage develop further from this episode. Mm-hmm. And Claire, of course. So Chris, do you defend this episode of Luke Cage?
Surprisingly, I'm 50-50. Mm. I'm sorry.
I'm not that surprised.
No. You saw how annoyed I was by Diamondback.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to take away from the setting, the atmosphere, the overall performances by the other characters. I just felt that it was too jarring an introduction to a character like that. If they had have introduced Diamondback earlier and we knew his idiosyncrasies and his just quirks, then maybe. Because if he was that way across 2 episodes prior and we saw him like just being completely weird, sadistic to henchmen, then when he came and did this, it would set it up fine. But we still don't know why the supposed big boss is driving around by himself with the gun. Okay, now we know it's personal.
Yeah.
But still, yeah, you're one of the biggest crime bosses after Kingpin. You're probably going to send someone else. It's like, meh. Nothing to say that the portrayal by the actor is bad. It was just the character is just too different to this tone of the show that they built so far.
Right.
It was just, could it have worked? Potentially. To, like I said, if they had it started earlier, but it just right now, it doesn't work for me. And I just thought, yeah, it was.
But do you defend it? 50-50? Is that a defend?
I defend it and I damn it to hell at the same time. But it's going to come back with superhero powers.
That's not...
There you go.
Okay. So you both defend it and you don't defend it?
Yeah. It's the only way I can say it. It's just the characters of Claire Temple and Misty Knight, again, fantastic portrayals in this. And it's building so much character development.
Alfred Woodard, yeah.
And then, Alfred Woodard and Mariah, again, fantastic. Shades. The little we saw of him was fantastic.
So cool. And the look on his face when he's got the club and the useless people that didn't guard Stokes, telling them all to go out and buy good suits because we are A1 from this point onwards. We are the top class from now on. Very cool. So really what you're saying, Chris, is you didn't dig it. Basically what you're saying.
No.
Your answer to Diamondback would have been
like, no, mate. No. Don't dig it.
Very cool. But another overall, some good bits in this episode. Really enjoyable.
Absolutely.
Always good to talk about them on the podcast, though, of course. If you want to send in your thoughts about the podcast or the show, obviously, you can email us to feedback@defenderstvpodcast.com or come and join us over on our Facebook group over at facebook.com/groups/defenderstvpodcast. So we got some feedback in about episode 8 of Luke Cage. Our first piece of feedback came from our Facebook group, came from Ronaldo. He says, I'm rereading the 90s Cage comic run and there's something very 90s about Ray's Diamondback. I love it. I think it's the haircut, very popular in the 90s, and I swear some of the artists have used Eric LeRae Harvey's face as inspiration. There's just something about his look that makes him seem like he's jumped straight out of a comic book. Loving Diamondback, he's pretty ruthless.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think here, Diamondback is, how should I say it? Maybe he's split opinion, actually.
Definitely.
Some people are really enjoying him. Some people have warmed to him. I would class that in myself. Initially, there was a bit of a shock there that I had to get over, but I've warmed to how he's portraying it. I do think it's actually, a kind of consistent and almost like an homage to that blaxploitation without being too far down that road.
Yeah.
And then for others, it's too much of a jar. It kind of kicks them out of this idea maybe that these shows are more real, more street level and so on, even though they're dealing with superpowers. And I mean, I love the reality or the realism of these shows, absolutely. But I can maybe assimilate some more of the craziness, but certainly, I love the fact that this character has provided this sort of response. I mean, at the end of the day, it shows that, not everything has to be accepted automatically and not everything is necessarily 100%. And I think in this case, it's really great to see those people who are really enjoying the portrayal of Diamondback.
Yeah.
Of which I think now I class myself as one of those. As I say, I had an initial jar, but then I've grown to like Diamondback.
Yeah.
I think he is quite creepy.
Rebecca Brador says Diamondback is possibly the biggest comic book likeness in ages in the shows. And I totally agree with her. Yeah, I think there's been a lot taken from the general overview of the characters for these shows on Netflix. But Diamondback does feel like something directly out of the comic books. To Ronaldo's point, yeah, you were saying it was from the 90s Cage run. I was definitely seeing a lot of 70s blaxploitation in the character, which is probably where they got their inspiration from and then pulled it back into the 90s comic run. So it's all circular.
And then, of course, at the other side of this debate is we've got some feedback in from Claire Laffer, who says, is it bad that I'm really irritated by Diamondback? I much preferred Cottonmouth to him.
Yeah.
And again, I think that's a valid point. Cottonmouth, maybe to some extent feels as though he has been taken away from us as an audience too soon. But certainly, and at the end of the day, you know, as a character within the show, having that relationship to Mariah Dillard, and of course getting an element of the backstory of Cottonmouth to his relationship with Pops and his relationship to his aunt Mama Mabel and Pistol Pete and all those aspects lends a depth to Cottonmouth, which I think ultimately with Diamondback we haven't yet found out.
Yeah.
All we know is that he has a significant vendetta against Luke Cage, but he's kind of on his own. He's a bit of a loner, and I think that makes it more difficult to maybe connect with that character as a result of that.
Yeah, I don't think there's any real comparison between the characters of Cottonmouth and Diamondback. I think they're two very distinct characters in this show. It's almost like comparing Pops and Mariah, you know, to me, they're two completely different characters in the show. I'm totally on the side of Diamondback though. I really enjoyed him. I think I talked about it in this episode, particularly how much I enjoyed his introduction. So, but I know I'm sure he's a character that would rub people up the wrong way. We did hear it with Chris. So we know that there are people that have that kind of opinion on him. But thanks so much for the feedback there, Claire and Ronaldo and Rebecca.
Yep. So a new member to our Facebook group, over at Groups, Defenders TV podcast, Robert Phillips says, so is the whole of the second half going to be with cliffhangers? Do you think, chaps? This episode just makes me think bad things about nearly everyone. Misty seeing through the fog of anti-Cage prejudice, Brother Diamondback, the discarded twin, older sibling who seeks slaughter, Luke himself for leaving his brother when he needed a hand, and the driver of the rubbish truck who sat quietly in the van waiting until a very large man got shot into the back before driving away. Perhaps Harlem really is a very special part of New York City. Claire Temple, though, is a proper angel. And one more thought. Was Mariah channeling Mama Mabel with the "you're not a whore, you're a businesswoman," and then later hating herself for continuing to spin the lies? That's really good feedback. I mean, absolutely. With regards to Mariah Dillard, I love the fact that she has this relationship with the picture of Mama Mabel on her desk, and on her fireplace. I just that she has to turn it down and put it to the desk, so that she feels as though she's not being watched or being judged by this hugely, influential, domineering matriarch from her past. Maybe someone who, you know, she's trying to break out of her expectations to some extent. Because obviously Mariah Dillard is the one who seemingly doesn't want to be involved, so much with the family business, but more take a more upstanding route. Although, okay, she fails at this.
I think she's just ignoring it a lot of the time, how close she is to Mama Mabel. So yeah, I like the reference here that Robert's pulled out about this is the type of thing that Mabel would do. She'd try and encourage somebody in that way. So really, really good. Thanks very much for that feedback, Robert, and welcome to the Facebook group. Great to have you join us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, with regards to all the cliffhangers, there's certainly a lot there. I mean, I think the biggest thing is to see how Misty's relationship with Luke Cage develops, because obviously at the moment she has serious suspicions about him. And of course, the other big element of this is, you know, what is Diamondback's big issue with Luke Cage? This idea of, you know, a twin, the older sibling, you know, is it just simply he feels betrayed, left behind by his brother, or is it something more connected in with his mother and father, or their common father at least? So really, really interesting to see how this all works out. And yes, of course, Yeah, he mustn't have been looking in his rearview mirror or wing mirrors, the driver of that dump truck.
Definitely. No, there's definitely something different about this episode. It does feel like we're starting to get into the more standard Netflix build of an episode where it gets to the last couple of minutes and you get a bit more of a cliffhanger and then you press your button to go on to the next show, or most of you, our listeners, do anyway. And thanks so much for that feedback over on our Facebook group. We did also get some feedback over by email. It was actually on episode 4, and it came from Floby, who was one of our listeners right back to Daredevil season 1. She says, "Hey guys, I've just finished episode 4. OMG, I can't believe they worked in the yellow shirt, braces, and the tiara, and the chain belt to boot. So awesome. Keep up the great work, boys. Hope really enjoying the podcast." Thanks so much, Floby. Really good to hear from you again. Yeah, that was a wonderful moment in episode 4. We really enjoyed that.
Absolutely spot on. Absolutely spot on, working in that classic comic costume into something that is, street level, realistic. Yeah, great work in there from the Marvel crew. And then finally, we also got some more feedback on our email by Claire Payne. She says, "Well, Luke Cage doesn't disappoint. I really enjoyed his appearance in Jessica Jones, and when I heard he was getting his own show, was delighted to find out more about this great character. I actually had not heard of any of these characters from Marvel, so it has been a nice discovery. Mike Coulter is excellent as the calm exterior giant Luke Cage. I don't blame Chris for wanting to go to the gym to get his muscles." Well, wouldn't we all? Myself, I'm at the gym trying to get Detective Misty Knight's abs. Misty, another excellent character, very believable in the role. I also enjoy seeing how life in Harlem is so different to the other parts of New York, and how Luke is keeping a low profile while working in Pops's barbershop to rebuild his life. Then at night, a dishwasher at Harlem's Paradise, which has some amazing live music owned by the gangster Cottonmouth. As I'm new to this part of the Marvel world, I don't feel qualified to actually break down each episode and put my opinion forward on the storyline and character, because I really enjoy listening to your podcasts as they've been released. I've gone back and watched the episode again. The way you cover the episodes on your podcasts is outstanding. Your enthusiasm, knowledge, and your own personal opinions is interesting and infectious. So thank you, John, Derek, and Chris. It's great to finally hear your dulcet tones for covering the Luke Cage series. It's definitely a hit in my house. We'll look forward to listening to the future podcasts of anything you cover. Regards, Claire. Thank you, Claire, so much for that. Obviously, Claire, we know from our Gotham TV podcast, and it's great that she's come over to discover more about the Marvel universe from the DC universe. It's really good to have new people coming over to Defenders to listen to some of our ramblings, thoughts, insights, knowledge. Maybe not all in that order, of course,
absolutely.
But
and at least a fun chat anyway.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for the feedback there, Claire. It's really appreciated. And again, thank you so much to everyone who's provided feedback on this episode and the other feedbacks. It really is so good to get in terms of being able to, share your thoughts with the other listeners.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So keep sending them in through our email over at feedback@defenderstvpodcast.com, or go through the Facebook group. Just join facebook.com/groups/defenderstvpodcast. We're always great to hear from you, and really enjoyable to get your thoughts. Some of them are so much more insightful than ones we have. So I love hearing them.
Absolutely. And of course, remember, you can, if you so want to have your voice heard on Defenders TV podcast, on one of our episodes, you can leave a voice message on our website at defenderstvpodcast.com. It's just there on the right-hand side of the screen.
Yeah.
You can leave 90 seconds worth of audio. The trailblazer in this regard is Ronaldo, one of our listeners from Australia, who provided feedback. So we have our first, remember, follow the leader as it is. It'd be great to get some audio feedback that we can share as well on the podcast.
Definitely. And you can do that from a desktop or from your mobile. You can press the button from your mobile when you go to our website. It is mobile enabled as well. So it might be easier for you to do that. Maybe while you're on the bus home from work, leave a bit of feedback for us over there. Thanks so much for all your thoughts.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the feedback and your thoughts. It's really appreciated. And I think with that, that's toodaloo from me.
Toodaloo.
Now that I'm done with this, I'm going back to being the sexy, domineering bitch that I always am and that you hate to love.
stop referring to yourself as a bitch.
Absolutely. We're going to keep running because I'm enjoying this. That is for sure. Thank you so much for listening as always, and we will be speaking with you next time.
Yep, we'll be back on Friday with episode 9 of Luke Cage DWYCK, the one song by Gangstar I have absolutely no clue what those letters mean, and I've been trying to work it out for weeks. Please tell me before the episode gets released. I'll have worked out what they are, but looking forward to it, and happy Halloween, everybody.
Ooh.
Boo.
Bye.
Speak with you next time. Bye.
You think I'm holding back? You think I'm holding back? I'm out to save you.
You have been listening to Defenders TV Podcast, a production of TV Podcast Industries. If you want to subscribe to the podcast, please go to www.defenderstvpodcast.com/iTunes and subscribe there, leave a review, or alternatively go to any other good podcast catcher and search Defenders TV Podcast for Android users. Leave a review, subscribe. This really helps independent podcasts to be found out by other interested listeners. Also share our podcast updates on Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, or any other social media platform. You can also join us on Twitter at DefendersCast. You can join us on Facebook, join our group at facebook.com/groups/Defenders TV Podcast. Come and join the community, enter into the discussion, leave comments and feedback. If you want to get involved in the podcast, you can leave feedback at defenderstvpodcast.com, or alternatively, you can leave a voicemail on our website at www.defenderstvpodcast.com. 90 seconds long and be an audio part of our podcast. As always, thank you so much for listening, and we will speak to you again soon.